Just at 8 this morning, Dr. Martin Luther King's body was brought to lie in state for an hour. Hundreds paid their respects during that brief hour. They were old, they were dressed for work, they were middle-aged, with families, young, well-dressed, curious children. But they were almost all black.
This nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. Not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
At exactly 6:01 p.m. on April 4th, 1968, a single bullet cut through the evening air and changed the course of history forever, not just in America, but across the world, because in that moment, a voice that had carried hope, strength, and defiance was suddenly silenced. But what makes this moment different, what makes it linger decades later, is not just the shot itself. It's what happened. The night before, less than 24 hours earlier, Martin Luther King Jr. stood before a crowd, not as a man afraid, but as a man at peace. And he spoke words that today feel less like a speech and more like a warning. He spoke about death, about not getting there with them, about a future he might never see, almost as if he knew, almost as if he could feel what was coming. So the question is not just who killed him. The question is, did he already know? His time was running out. On April 3rd, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, a storm rolled through the city. Rain battered rooftops relentlessly, wind howled through the streets, and thunder cracked across the sky like a warning. The kind of storm that keeps people indoors, the kind of night where plans are canceled and gatherings fade away. And for a moment, it seemed like this one might too. But inside Mason Temple, something different was happening. Despite the weather, despite the uncertainty, people kept arriving, shaking off rain, wiping their coats, taking their seats, because they felt it, that something important was about to be said. And then he walked in, tired. Yes, the weight of years, visible in his face, but composed, steady, unshaken. Because this wasn't just another speech. This was a man, speaking from somewhere deeper, not just from conviction, but from clarity. And as he spoke, the room changed. What once sounded powerful now feels prophetic. To understand that moment, you have to understand the man behind it. He wasn't just a leader. He was a preacher, raised in faith, grounded in belief, a scholar who studied deeply and thought carefully, a strategist who understood that real change required more than anger. It required discipline. It required vision. Inspired by the teachings of Christ and the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, he built something different, a movement rooted not in violence, but in moral force, because nonviolence was never weakness. It was pressure. It exposed injustice without becoming it. It forced the world to watch. And once the world was watching, it could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. But by 1968, something had changed. The movement had grown, but so had the resistance, and so had the stakes. He began to look beyond civil rights alone and toward something bigger: poverty, economic injustice, the systems that kept people trapped, even after laws had changed. And then he spoke about war, the Vietnam War. He called it not just a political mistake, but a moral failure. And in that moment, lines were drawn. Because speaking about equality was one thing, but challenging power on every level was something else entirely. And slowly, quietly, he began to lose allies. Behind the scenes, he was being watched, not casually, not occasionally, constantly. The FBI monitored his movements, his conversations, his private life, wiretaps, surveillance, files, documents, an entire system focused on one man, because to some, he was a symbol of hope, but to others, he was becoming dangerous, not because of violence, but because of influence, because he had the ability to move people, to unite them, to make them believe that change was not only possible, but necessary. Which brings us to Memphis, a city caught in struggle. Sanitation workers demanding dignity, demanding fairness, demanding recognition. I am a man. 3 words. Simple, direct, unapologetic. But those words challenged everything because they demanded to be seen, and that was powerful. April 4th, 1968. The day began, like many others. There was conversation, laughter, moments of calm. Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual. Just a man moving through his day, unaware, or perhaps fully aware of what was coming. He stepped out onto the balcony, spoke casually, made a simple request. "Take my hand, precious Lord." A quiet moment, almost peaceful. And then a single shot rang out, sharp, sudden, final. Time seemed to pause for just a fraction of a second. Everything stood still. And then he fell. No warning, no chance, just silence. And in that silence, history shifted. At 7:05 p.m., he was pronounced dead, and within minutes, the news began to spread. Across cities, across states, across continents, phones rang, radios crackled, televisions flickered to life, and everywhere, people heard the same words. He was gone, and with that, a wave of grief swept across the world. The man accused was James Earl Ray, a name that would become infamous. He fled quickly, moved across borders, changed identities, trying to disappear in a world that was already watching. But the story was far from simple. He confessed. Then he took it back. And from that moment, questions began to grow. Questions about what really happened. Questions about who was involved. Questions that have never fully disappeared. Because sometimes the truth is not as simple as it seems. Grief turned into anger. Cities erupted, streets filled, fires burned, voices rose, over 100 cities in unrest. Because this wasn't just the loss of a man, it was the loss of something bigger, a symbol, a leader, a voice that had carried hope. But even in loss, something remained. His words, his vision, his dream. A dream that refused to disappear. A dream that continued to echo through generations, through movements, through time itself. April 4th, 1968, and was the day a man was silenced, but not his message. Because ideas don't bleed. They don't die. They don't disappear. They wait. They endure. They move from one person to the next. Carried forward by those willing to remember and those willing to continue what he started.
The plane had come from Atlanta bearing Mrs. King. There were police and National Guardsmen at the airport with rifles and shotguns and riot sticks to hold back the crowd of newsmen and spectators. After some delay, the casket was placed aboard for the last journey home to Atlanta.